Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. As you can see, this week I am continuing on with my 18th century pastoral project, which I have on here. Since last week's video, the only thing that I have done was finish sewing the hand sewn trim on right here along the edge, and I also actually hemmed my quilted petticoat, which is not something that you can see, but I made it shorter. It was already hemmed, it was just going to be too long for this outfit, so I turned up a second hem underneath, and that means that now it's an okay length for this dress. It also means that I can hem the petticoat and I think also, honestly, the overgown. The overgown I'm planning to probably always wear pulled up in the back. So I actually did cut it, well, I thought I cut it the same length as the petticoat, but looking at the hem, which I know you can't see here, it is actually about 1.5 to 2 inches shorter, which is fine because again, I'm wearing it pulled up. Not a big deal at all, and I can just turn an even hem on that one, like a narrow even hem, and hand sew that and call it good, which is great. The hem on the petticoat is not too much longer currently, like the cut edge of the petticoat, it's not too much longer currently than the quilted petticoat. So it is going to also be a very narrow hem, and I am going to basically use the edge of the quilted petticoat as my guide because the silk petticoat will have a ruffle of the cotton voile over it. So that way I can make the voile about like 1/2 inch or so longer than the bottom of the petticoat. Maybe not even half, maybe like 1/4 inch, but just a tiny bit longer so that it will mask the edges and so that none of the silk will show from underneath the voile. So that's my plan for that. But yeah, bodice is on. Right now it is just pinned in place to the stomacher. One side, I think it's this side, yeah, this side is going to get stitched in place so that it's always attached to this side of the bodice. And then this is the side that I have hooks on the gown portion already. I just need to sew the bars on the stomacher. So I needed to see like, what does it look like? You know, where exactly does it overlap to? For example, I wound up coming in more here because I swear I must have like the narrowest chest area in the world because this is my problem in literally everything. And I don't know how people did this in the 18th century, but yeah, I wind up coming in narrower up top than like right here because it's just such a difference right there. So if you have any explanation for like how they would have actually accommodated that in the 18th century, or if this is literally what they would have done with the stomacher where it just winds up being a little narrower, let me know, because I know that probably the answer is that they didn't come up above the bust point, because in the 18th century they liked really freaking low necklines, and modernness, me, means that I don't feel comfortable with that. And also I don't know what you do with your chemise at that point because my chemise is way above that. But yeah, maybe it's just that their necklines literally would have been to here, and that is too low for me because yeah. So anyway, I am going to be tonight doing hopefully some hand sewing at rehearsal, whether that is hem, because I'm gonna go press this hem up and pin that in place, or whether that is like the bars or it's just stitching the stomacher on. I'm not sure yet, but there's a lot of hand sewing in my future. Once the hand sewing is done, or once I have a little bit more time for machine sewing, I'm also going to start on poufy sleeves. So the sleeves are going to be made out of cotton wool, and I think I'm going to go with just a single layer and not a lining layer inside, but I do want to play with the voile and see if that's going to be too sheer because it is, you know, a semi-sheer fabric. But basically I am planning to do large puff and then it'll come in right here, and then I haven't yet decided whether I want lower puff or lower ruffle, but it's going to be one of those. And then there's going to be contrast pink trim where it comes in on like the up right above the elbow, I think is where it's going to come in. So yeah, that is, oh, you know what? I have one other thing that I need to talk to you about too, which are these little button center points. I told you in the last video that I posted a poll on Instagram and that you guys told me that you voted for the little flowers. But you know what? I held up the little flowers here and I don't know, maybe you're having the same thoughts now. They don't look good. They just blend in with the background. They don't do anything at all. So then I went and I held up some of the other options. Like, I think the second most popular were these ones here, and these literally just look like buttons. And that's not the look I'm going for. So then I was down to the rhinestones, and I put the big rhinestones on at first. I pinned them in, and I think they are too much. This, just for contrast, is the big rhinestone. So like, for example, if I were to have a big rhinestone there instead of a small, I don't know if you can see, but I'll zoom in on this. Basically, the big ones just seemed too big. So I think I'm gonna go with the small vintage rhinestones. So that's the ones from off of this card right here. I have 4 of them into my bodice right now. There's 2 more on here, and then this top one is going to be hidden by a bow. It's my plan, so it shouldn't matter that I only have 6 of them. But yeah, that's where I've decided to go with that. So I'm gonna have to make sure that obviously they're pinned in the right place. I'm gonna do that flat before I even attach this to the bodice, because I think it'll be easier that way. But yeah, I think we're in a pretty good place with everything. And I just wanted to show you, I have actually been playing around with the like rhinestone options here, and I've switched them all out to the larger ones, and I put one small one on this bow. And so I just kind of wanted to show you what that kind of looks like. So it's like a 4-pointed bow. I don't know that I'm going to use this ribbon. It was just the only one that I had that matched, but it's honestly much wider than I would want for this situation. This is a very wide ribbon here, and I think like this is what, 3 inches probably, and I think probably I'd want more like a 2-inch ribbon, but it will work if I can't find a better match. But yeah, something kind of like that. So small one here, large ones there. That is going to be the answer. So I'm going to go sew those on now. So I don't even remember the last thing that it was that I filmed that you watched, because that was Monday and it is now Friday, and all I've been doing this week is hand sewing. So I have been doing a lot of hand sewing to the point where probably should have been wearing a thimble because my finger hurts. But the buttons are all on here, the bars are all on here, the skirt, the overskirt, I should say, the green, is hemmed. The underskirt, the petticoat, it's all pressed and pinned, still needs to be hemmed. I'm hopefully going to get a little of that done maybe tonight, because I'm going to a movie night at a friend's house, and if not, I'm going to be working on that at tomorrow's rehearsal. But I'm ready to start adding additional things to this. So I think since I have a short amount of time before movie night, I think the thing that I want to do first is play with like the draping of the skirt here to determine how deep I want the wall ruffle. So that's what I need to figure out. I have all of my fabric here, and I was looking at some inspiration images on Pinterest, trying to decide like how I want the ruffle to work. Do I want it to be like right sides together folded down so you get a clean edge up at the top, or do I want it to stick up at the edge of the top and, you know, maybe have a narrow hem up there? Because I don't really think that this kind of fabric can be pinked. I'm curious to try it, but I feel like pinking on this is just going to unravel because I think it's too loose of a weave. So I think that I will need to do a narrow hem, maybe even a rolled hem on the serger now that I have my serger back, but I might try a narrow hem. But that's what I was looking at those images for, and I determined that yes, I do want it to basically like stick up, have a little narrow ruffle up top, and then the longer hanging down. What I haven't quite yet decided is if I want this section right here, so there's like a row of gathering right here, if I want that then to be ruched and have another row of gathering here. I have seen a lot of evidence of both types, to have both like shirred section right here ruched up, and then the little up top ruffle and then the big long ruffle, and then also I've seen it where there's just one row of gathering. Either way, I do want it to have trim on top, so I'm kind of thinking that I probably only need the one row of gathering, or I mean, really, there will be 2 rows, but there will be much closer together. So it's not like you'll see shirring. The rows of gathering will just be hidden underneath the trim. So I think that is what I'm going to go with. And I am planning to just rip this because this does rip on the grain, luckily. And yeah, I'm probably just gonna rip it on the grain once I determine how deep I want it on this petticoat. But I wanted to get everything here done first so that I can then play with the drape and figure out how deep I want it. So first, let me just show you a little closer what everything looks like, and then I'm gonna play with the draping. So as you can probably tell, it does not actually close on this dress form. When I wear stays, my bust gets very much compressed, and the dress form is not wearing stays, it's wearing a Victorian corset. So this will come over to here, but I've got the large rhinestones there in the center, and then all of the little flower trim that's been on since kind of the end of last week. This is going to be a bow. I didn't find anything in my stash lace-wise that I like to add behind here currently. That might change. I might find something else, but I am also going to be making stuff like a fichu, so it might not even matter. And the bow up top is going to come once I determine what shade of pink is happening. Like, am I going to use the pink silk I have, which is the darker? Am I going to use the ribbon that I have, which is darker? Or am I going to use like this little scrap bits of ribbon, which I don't have enough to put it anywhere else on the dress, and it's really like wider than I wanted, but it would look kind of cute, I think, just, you know, there without this giant tail hanging down, just that. Maybe a little wider. It's hard to tell since this isn't actually pinned in place. But yeah, and then there is the petticoat and the overskirt. So again, everything is like the length that it's going to be. It's just that this needs to be sewn. That is already sewn. And the other thing that I'm trying to decide if I want to do is adding the floral trim here. Might be cute, not sure, might just be covered with the apron, so we'll see about that later. So as far as tucking up the gown skirts goes, I think I want it something like this, just to show you what that looks like over here. Don't mind the silk all over the floor, but it will be somewhere around this vicinity. This is literally just pinned in place right now, and I'm not entirely sure the method to tuck them up because I would like the option of being able to wear it down, so I don't want to like stitch it in place, but I also don't want really obvious ties, so I might have to research some other method, because what I've done in the past with this sort of thing is like, oh, you have like a button right here and there's like a loop or something hanging from the button, and then it ties, or there's like a tie coming out from underneath and they just tie in a little bow, and I don't want that. But what I would want is the then decorative bow to be right here. So maybe I should just sew it, I don't know, but it also seems like if I sew it, then steaming this is going to be a nightmare for like travel if I take it to costume college. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking, you know, that sort of decoration in there. That's just the one from the bust. But having that, I think would be really, really cute. Now, I'm not sure yet still about the floral trim, because I feel like we're not seeing a lot of this right here. So I don't know that like adding any trim there would really have any benefit. I mean, I guess it would add further delineation, but yeah, I don't know that that's really necessary. So as far as the ruffle goes, I'm honestly almost tempted to make the apron first, or at least have some sort of like a stand-in apron to hold up there just so I can judge length, because it's hard to tell how deep I want the ruffle without the apron being filled in. Lion, I'm trying to film the thing you're standing in front of. You're very cute, but you're hitting the skirt with your tail. Can you not do that, please? Lion? Lion, anywhere else? What I'm trying to show you here is that I'm using some stand-in aprons to judge length. I've pretty much determined that this apron is way too short and I want a longer apron, which means of course that the ruffle is going to have to be shorter, but this apron just looks really cropped. So I'm going to try a different one and see how that goes. I think this apron is the length that I want, which oddly enough kind of makes sense because this is an 18th century apron. It's one of my first historical costume pieces that I've ever owned. It's from Colonial Williamsburg, and we got it on a family trip when I was in middle school. So yeah, that looks like a good length for the apron. It is going to make the ruffle a little short though, because I want some of the stripes to show in between. So I'm almost tempted to see if I ought to hem this a tiny bit. I think there's a pretty big disparity between these two aprons lengthwise. Maybe I want something a little bit in between. Yeah, the Williamsburg apron is 8 inches longer than this little apron here. So I think maybe I'll try to fold up the hem of the Williamsburg apron to see if a slightly shorter one would be better. Here we go. I think that is a much better length. So it's turned up about 3 inches is what I came to. I did 4 at first and then I turned up another inch. And I also think that I like the fullness, like the quantity of fabric, but this one of the problems I had down at the hem was like it's all actually coming from about here. So I kind of pulled it out more just to make it wider. So I do want that wider width where it like tucks in underneath here. And yeah, I think that's about it as far as the apron goes, which means that I can now determine the length of the ruffle. So I'm having a bit of a like mouse a cookie, moose a muffin moment with this, because I did the math and I determined that I want it to be a 15-inch wide starting point, and then it will get a hem that's turned up like a 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch on the bottom, and then a narrow turned hem on the top. And so the fabric is 45 inches wide. So technically I could get 3 widths of that ruffle across, which is good because I think I got, honestly, I don't remember. I should probably measure my fabric. I feel like I got like 6 yards, but it could have been 7 yards. I know it was short, whatever I actually wanted. I think I wanted 8, and I think it wound up actually being more like 7. But I did the math of like how much I need to go around. And I want this to be, I think, a triple depth ruffle, like a 3-to-1 ratio ruffle, because this is sheer fabric that ruffles very, very easily. And so a 3-to-1 means, I had to use a calculator for this because it was a lot. It means that I need 474.75 inches of ruffle, which is a little over 13 yards of ruffle. So obviously I need more than 2 strips out of that fabric, because I'm going to do the ruffle like the length of the fabric instead of the width, because then I have a lot less to seam together and just a lot less to worry about there. But where the moose a muffin mouse cookie comes in is that I haven't done my sleeves yet. And the sleeves are going to be made out of that fabric. So I can't rip the entire full length of the fabric, because these are going to be wide gathered sleeves that are going to need like their own yard, 2 yards. Like, is it going to be a yard a piece? Is it going to be 1/2 yard a piece? I don't know. So I think I need to do the sleeves first, is basically what I'm trying to say. So at least I have the math for the ruffle done. Oh wait, and then obviously I need to cut the apron out of it too. So I really don't have the length of this at all. In fact, am I gonna need to get more fabric? Maybe. Hopefully not. But yeah, I have to get the apron's width out of the fabric, the sleeves out of the fabric, and then I can rip a ruffle, because otherwise I'm not gonna have the fabric for the sleeves and the apron. So I guess I'm not ripping that ruffle right now, but I'm about to head out for movie night. So I'm gonna take the petticoat along with me after writing down all of the math for the ruffle, and we'll see how much of that petticoat gets hemmed between tonight and then tomorrow morning at rehearsal. And then after rehearsal, I guess I'll be starting on either the sleeves or the apron. So I know I look rather the worse for wear, but I just got home from movie night and I actually wound up sewing all but about like 15 inches of this hem by hand during the movie, which was A Night to Remember, the like 1950s Titanic movie. So that means that there is not enough to bring with me to rehearsal tomorrow. So really quickly, even though I should be getting ready for bed, I am prepping the apron for tomorrow. So I ripped a square piece like on the grain, because wow, this was cut off of the grain, like I think this far off the grain on one side. So I ripped a piece. It is 27.5 inches long by the width of the fabric, which is 45 inches. I did cut off the selvages on the sides because they were kind of pulling in the fabric and like gathering it together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather one side, the top side, and I'm going to press and pin the other 3 sides so that I can hem this at rehearsal tomorrow. I've done my little hand hems on the apron here. So this wide one is the bottom, and then the narrow one here, these are the sides. And now I'm about to rip waistbands. So I've marked 2 of these 4 inches wide, and I've done little cuts. I'm just gonna rip these and press them there. Then they're gonna get joined together in the middle after I cut the selvage off, because the selvage looks quite different. And they're gonna get joined together in the middle and then made into the ties for the apron. So this is going to go in like the middle 15 inches of this, and then the rest of them are just going to be sewn right sides together and turned kind of like a strap. So they wind up being, you know, just this wide, like 1.5 inches wide with, you know, straight ends, and they will be ties. I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. So I decided to actually split up one of the ties into 2 pieces so that I didn't have a seam in the center area here. So you can see the seam is over here instead, but I have attached this to that center 15 inches of the waistband. And now I'm folding this part right sides together, and I'm going to sew along here, all the way from here, and then all the way to the corner. So you can see this side is already pinned in place all the way to the corner there. So it'll go along like this and then go up like this. And then this whole tube and the other side will be turned after clipping the corners, of course. And then this side gets flipped behind. This little underside here gets pressed, and it'll be hand whip. Well, I don't know if I'm going to do it by hand or not. I'll either hand whip stitch it or I will stitch in the ditch on the sewing machine if I can. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And here is the little frothy finished apron look. It's so light and airy, but at the same time, I kind of like that you really can't see the stripes too much through it, even though really when taken by itself, it is quite sheer. But I feel like because there's like a fair amount of density of the fabric, this is the 3-to-1 ratio that is also going to be on the ruffle, or at least it's 3-to-1 at the waist. Obviously it kind of falls out a bit up here, but yeah, I think that looks really, really nice. And then that's what it looks like with the gown on top. So next up is going to be sleeves, even though what I really want to work on is the ruffle. So I finally have this on for the first time since I like added the hooks and eyes, and really like since I finished everything pretty much, I think. And there's definitely some things that I want to tweak about this area. I did get a couple of comments online when I posted a poll asking about sleeves, about like that the neckline is very Victorian, and honestly it didn't look that way as much on the dress form. And now that I've put it on, I can see that it is. And I didn't remember this being this way with Felicity, but I guess I did tweak the opening, so maybe that was why. But do you see how it's like curving in literally right here? That's not right, and it shouldn't be happening like that. So I don't know, I feel like I need to somehow make this not do that. And it's also affecting right here as well. I mean, I know that I have a narrow chest area and that I don't want like huge open décolletage because I'm just not comfortable with that. But for one thing, this is sticking out. I think you can see how much it's sticking out right there. And I do wonder if lowering it just a skosh, like a 1/2 inch, would help with that sticking out problem. And then I think that like the fit would still be right, but I do think that it's kind of starting here that this needs to curve away. And I do have a little bit of room with my chemise. I like undid my chemise ties to like the loosest that they could be, and it's given me about 1 inch of play because the chemise is now coming to here. So that means that I can actually take this out just a little bit. Of course, it's undoing like so much handwork because, you know, this was put on by hand. The bias tape on the other side is, you know, stitched down by hand. But I think what needs to happen is that I need to remove the hand stitching of the trim from about like here up and remove the hand stitching of the bias, just fold it back a little bit farther, and then probably like disconnect the very top of the stomacher from this side and probably move, well, definitely move, because I have to undo the hook on this side, which means that I will probably have to move the bar as well. So it's not the worst thing ever, and I think like by the time we get up to the shoulders up here, I'm probably okay. So it's probably just about like that, I don't know, what is that, like 10 inches or so on each side that has to be tweaked a little there. Everything else is looking great. I'm really enjoying everything else. I think it looks wonderful. I do still have to figure out how to tie the skirts up. But I really like the apron. I think it looks nice and floofy. I know you're not seeing much of it in this shot, but it does a good job there. That poll that I had put on Instagram that I mentioned, that was about sleeves, because I was back on Pinterest yesterday and thinking about sleeves because, you know, I'm a little belated on getting to them. And I was realizing that like while the ballet and opera costumes, they had a lot of that like poofy sort of shepherdess type sleeve, really in actuality, the like normal mainstream style that you would see in fashion plates has this kind of sleeve right here, where it is a normal fitted sleeve, like out of the green bodice material, and then it's got that ruched white bit around the bottom, the lower part of the upper arm to the elbow, etc. So I was trying to figure out what to do, and I asked my patrons and I asked all of you guys on Instagram which kind of sleeve I should do. It's now been, it hasn't been 24 hours, but I think it's been maybe about 16 or so hours since I posted those two polls. On Patreon, I think it was unanimous that everyone said to go with the puffy sleeves. And on Instagram, right now I'm looking at it and it's 59% the puffy sleeves, 41% the fitted sleeves. When it first started out, like as of before I woke up this morning, it was even more percentage for the puffy sleeves, but obviously more of you think I should go with the puffy sleeve route. So I think I am gonna stick with that. I was looking at the sleeve from Simplicity 1728, that's this one here, and I think that that's gonna be a pretty good pattern for me to kind of base my sleeve off of. So that sleeve is huge. Let me show you the pattern piece for that. It's this big, and this is actually only the size 18. For some reason, the pattern only goes up to a 20, so that's a problem right there. But for some reason, the pattern piece that is a 20, I cut out on the smallest size. It must have been something that I used as a commission for someone. Maybe I'd used this for when I made Ariel several years ago, but yeah, I'd cut it on the smallest size. So the 18 is the largest that'll be cut out, but I'm going to extend it up to a size 24 since that is the pattern size I normally am. So we're gonna add a little dimension even to all of this. It might be way too big, but we're gonna give it a go. And so because I had like this size already done, I was able to separate out my voile into sleeve voile versus ruffle voile. So this is ruffle voile right here. Basically, I did all of my math and I needed 160 inches of ruffle voile that will then be divided into 3 strips, and all of that will be hemmed, gathered, put on the petticoat. So that's all of this. And then this little bit is sleeve voile plus about 20 or so inches extra. I'm hoping maybe out of that 20 inches I can get a fichu out. I mean, right now, honestly, with the neckline as is, I don't even need a fichu, but my original plan had been to have a little fichu in there. So, and I need a replacement fichu anyway because I lost mine. So we'll see if I can get it out of this. If not, I will, I guess, either buy more fabric or use a different fabric that I have in my stash, because I think I do have some like cotton batiste, which would actually probably work better since it's pure cotton. But yeah, that is the plan. So fichu is definitely not going to be this week because obviously it's going to be the remainder fabric that is left over from everything else. But I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the sleeves right now. My one other question with the sleeves was, do I want a liner in there? Because this fabric is, you know, semi-sheer. I kind of think with the quantity of fabric that's going to be going into the sleeve that it's probably okay to leave as is. I just don't know if I'm gonna like the look of, I know that I will wind up seeing this chemise sleeve or shift sleeve underneath partway down because it's short sleeve. So that's my one thing. But I think I'm going to go ahead and cut out the sleeves out of this, not make a mock-up because they're giant puffs, and hopefully that means that I don't need a mock-up. But I'm gonna make them up out of this, like gather it, etc., and then see what that looks like and see if I need like an inner liner sleeve, and at that point I can add it. The sleeve construction for this pattern, it has you do, well, first off, there's 2 possibilities. So there's one that has the double puff and then it comes in with elastic at the bottom, and then there's one that just has elastic at the bottom. I know this is an 18th century costume, but I'm thinking I'm gonna use elastic at the bottom because I want it to be able to like stay right here on my arm and still give a puff. Mine will be a single puff, but then I will drop down where their elastic is midway, drop it down to about the elbow, and then release the bottom so that it can make its little gathery ruffle there from the bottom of the elastic. So yeah, that is my plan. and I'm gonna get to work. So I undid the everything about the neckline here and also here and have folded it back, but I think I'm gonna need to actually like cut away some of the fabric because as you can see, it's just wrinkly, like it needs less folded over because I just folded over everything. But it's definitely closer. I almost feel like it could go wider, but this is definitely a lot better than it was before. So I'm gonna try to cut away some of that fabric, see if I can get it to lay flat, and then from there maybe go wider. All right, so sleeve update here. Obviously something is not working. So I decided to try to do a fitted sleeve in the interior. Right now it's just my mock-up fitted sleeve with the actual fabric over, but I think you can tell that it is completely pulling this off my shoulder. And I don't know if I like set the fitted sleeve in wrong, maybe, if that's the problem, or if it's that my shoulders are too wide, or both, because I think these are too wide. Like basically I feel like if the neckline were in its correct place right now, this is hitting here, whereas it should be hitting like here. So that is like that big of a difference, really pretty big. And it's very tight up here, and that's why it's pulling. So something is very much not right, and I'm not really sure how to fix it. I also honestly kind of wish that I had had more volume in this. So the interior will be made, my plan anyway, is the interior will be made out of the same fabric as the exterior here, instead of one that is like a little bit more dense and tightly woven. But now that I'm like seeing it here, I'm almost wondering if I should go for the more tightly woven, just so that I really don't see like my chemise inside. But yeah, this is very much not working, and I'm also very much running out of time because someone needs a you-know-what, and it's gonna get dark in probably like a half, well, it's gonna start to get dark in like a half hour, so we need to go pretty darn soon. So I might try and make like one really quick tweak to this, but that's unfortunately all I have time for, and most likely means that it's all I have time for this week. So in other news, I did lower this neckline just a tiny bit more, like about somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch more, because I didn't want to go down past where the ribbon tops were. I'd have to mess with even more stuff. So I just lowered that a little bit more, and I did also curve this out a little bit more. You can see that on this side where it's not being pulled off my shoulder, and I am happy with this neckline now. So I have to redo the bias tape because I did actually wind up completely taking off the bias tape there, like it's not attached on any side. So I have to redo the machine side and then hand stitch it on and re-stitch on the decoration, and then neckline will be good. This has to have its little lace put back on, and this will just be sewn, machine sewn underneath, since the lace is going to cover it up anyway. But the sleeve is the bigger issue. So yeah, I think the main thing is that it's rotated too far back. I tried, like usually when I'm working out where to put the sleeve seam, I will put on the mock-up and then put on the bodice and see where that matches up. And I did that, but I think because of the puffiness, it probably just got done wrong. Like it got in the way. So yeah, that definitely has to be rotated downwards. And I'm a little worried that that's not going to be enough to help it. But I'm going to try undoing it now, resetting it, and that will be the last thing that I have time for on this video. Well, it's an improvement, but it is definitely not right. It's no longer pulling off my shoulder. Basically, I think I rotated the whole thing almost 2 inches forward so that the underarm seam would wind up more like under the arm, as opposed to, I think it was about right up here before. So I did rotate it, and I also did take in or take up at the shoulder. But I don't think I took up enough at the shoulder. I mean, it's close. Like where it is sitting now, if I were to not make it be pulling off, it's very close, but I think it still needs to be like here. And then I didn't take it here, I just kind of tapered it from here, and it's clearly here that really needs to come in, and I think that's where it's also like really, really pulling. So yeah, definitely still needs work, and it's really frustrating that I have to go walk Lion right now in the middle of all of this, but I always walk him if it's not raining. So even though it was hailing this morning, I really need to go take him. which means that fixing this winds up being in next week's video, A, and B, that I have to get all dressed up in the stays and everything again, even though I have literally been wearing them for hours today, but only gotten to the point of being able to fit this now. So, frustrating. I was really hoping to get further this week, like to have at least either the sleeves or the ruffle done. I hadn't intended to do the apron, so I guess that's at least done, but I really wanted one of these to be done. Yeah, so sleeves are going to be revisited next week. Check back next week so you can watch the actual rest of the fitting of the sleeves. Sorry to interrupt this into 2 videos, but with the show and everything, all of the sewing is going very, very, very slowly with this project. So, despite all that, hopefully you've enjoyed this week's video. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes additional content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, Laura, and Jean. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!